In 2016, there was one movie that was on every otaku's mind: Your Name. Your Name has replaced Spirited Away as the highest grossing anime movie of all time, with many people saying the film's director, Mokoto Shinkai, will be the next Hayao Miyazaki. Despite the acclaim, Your Name's storyline is not straightforward. Events are told out of order, which can add to the twisted plot. That's where we come in. In this video, we will be recapping the events of Your Name in chronological order to help demystify some details audience members may find when watching this amazing film. Plus, we'll look at the cultural impact this film has had since its release. Since this is a recap, there will be spoilers if it wasn't already apparent by now. Before Your Name went on to gain so much acclaim, Mokoto Shinkai had a few different names for the film before settling on Your Name. Production of this film went back to 2014, and in his initial proposal to Toho Animation, the film was first called I Knew It From a Dream. This was a reference to the Japanese poem Your Connection by Ono no Kamachi. The other possible title Shinkai had considered was You Are Half of This World, before settling on Your Name. Shinkai was inspired by other anime like Ranma One Half and Inside Mary, as well as classic Japanese poem Torikaibaya Monogatari. But perhaps one of the greatest influences came from Christopher Nolan's 2014 Interstellar, which makes sense given the story's themes of love transcending great distances like time and space. The film was first released at Anime Expo in July of 2016 before it was shown in Japan in August of that same year. It would get a wider North American release and a dub by Funimation in 2017. Your Name's release was massive to say the least. On release, this film made up 10% of Japan's total box office. Your Name was the second highest grossing anime film in Japan behind Spirited Away, and would soon surpass that by earning a gross box office amount of 23 billion yen, or $109 million. This has earned Shinkai the often unwanted title of the next Miyazaki. Still, the response to Your Name has been positive. With its blend of amazing visuals and locations, Mokoto Shinkai stepped into his own with this film, which would only bolster him further to release his next film, Weathering with You, which is currently out now. Despite this high praise and reviews, there is no such thing as a perfect movie. A note both viewers and critics have brought up is that the plot of Your Name is a little convoluted. This is not to the film's detriment at all, but it can take a second viewing to fully follow the timeline of events. The film presents its events out of order, and to make things even more complicated, our two main characters spend a majority of the movie at different times. Mitsuha exists in a small city of Itomori 3 years in the past, and Taki lives in Tokyo 3 years ahead. Well, actually, they're the same age, but they switch bodies 3 years apart from one another, and, well, you can see how that can be complicated. So I think we should just start where it all began. Our film begins with our two main characters, Mitsuha and Taki, reciting a cryptic yet poignant message. Once in a while when I wake up, I find myself crying. The dream I must have had I can never recall, but the sensation that I've lost something lingers for a long time after I wake up. I'm always searching for something, for someone. This feeling has possessed me, I think, from that day when the stars came falling. It was almost as if a scene from a dream. Nothing more, nothing less than a beautiful view. This is said while the comet flies over Itomori. But actually, this event takes place near the middle of the film. Our film actually began 1,200 years ago when a comet first appeared and struck the Earth, creating the lake that Itomori would be built upon. This comet would come again, spelling disaster when it strikes. Fast forward to our movie's timeline, and Mitsuha's mother dies. This would lead to her father abandoning his family and his duties to the Shinto shrine that they have been entrusted with. Instead, he goes into politics and becomes the mayor of Itomori. Needless to say, this strains his relationship with his family, most importantly with Mitsuha. Abandoned by their father and left without a mother, Mitsuha and her sister would then be raised by their grandma and be taught the traditions of the shrine, including how to make kuchi kamizake, or mouth-chewed sake, which is made by chewing rice and then spitting it out to let it ferment into sake. When Mitsuha grows up, she and her sister perform the ceremony to create her kuchi kamizake. This would play an integral part in connecting Taki and Mitsuha later on, and is perhaps the key that ends up saving the town of Itomori. Some of the townies watch Mitsuha's ritual and make little snide remarks about the weird old traditions. Flustered and sick of living in this backwater town, Mitsuha declares she wants nothing more than to move away from the big city. She wants to live in Tokyo. And in some cosmic sense, she gets exactly what she wants. This is where the first body switch between Taki and Mitsuha takes place. In the film, this is shown earlier, but it actually happens later. You see, Taki and Mitsuha are not only two different people living in two different places, with Taki living in Tokyo and Mitsuha living in Itomori, but also different times. When they switch bodies, Mitsuha is taking Taki's body 3 years into the future. During this first switch, they have no idea who the other person is and believe that it's all a dream. As such, the two teens kind of treat this as a dream, unknowingly embarrassing the other in their respective lives. When Mitsuha switches back, her family and friends all worry about her and wonder if she's alright. Mitsuha's friends fill her in about how odd she was acting and how she forgot all about her locker and how to do her hair. It seems to her that what she experienced might not have been a dream after all. This causes Mitsuha to track down Taki and meet him. There's just one problem. When Mitsuha and Taki switched bodies, it was 3 years into the future. In Mitsuha's present, Taki has no idea who Mitsuha is. She finally tracks him down on the subway, but because they had not switched bodies yet in his timeline, he doesn't recognize her. Her last effort to make a connection to Taki is to give him her red ribbon she uses to tie up her hair. When she does, she tells him her name, Mitsuha. This helps establish their bond to one another. Mitsuha returns home just in time for the festival her hometown throws every year. During the festival, the comet from before appears. Remember the beginning of the movie when our two characters recited that little poem? This is when that takes place. And as the comet splits apart, the unthinkable happens. Mitsuha and all of Itomori is lost when the comet strikes Earth. Mitsuha dies. What happens next really tests the bounds of space-time. 3 years pass, and Taki finds himself in Mitsuha's body. This is an alternate timeline before Mitsuha dies, but before Taki and her meet. These switches happen for several weeks and happen about twice a week at random. The common trigger, though, is sleep. When Taki goes to bed, sometimes he'll wake up as himself, and sometimes he'll wake up as Mitsuha. During this point in the film, Taki and Mitsuha get to know each other more by experiencing each other's lives. They develop their own little system of communicating. Mitsuha leaves notes in Taki's diary app for him to read when he returns to his body. After a while, Taki wants nothing more than to meet this girl he's been body swapping with. If only he knew where she lived. He gathers her surroundings and makes sketches of the town, but it never really occurs to him to ask what the name of her town is. The switches soon stop as Mitsuha died in her timeline, and Taki wants to find out more about the girl he's been switching with. He takes his friends and they journey into the Japanese countryside. Taki soon discovers the fate of Itomori, the town that was destroyed 3 years ago when the comet fell. The journal entries Mitsuha left also delete themselves off Taki's phone. Any trace of this girl's existence is gone, except for the red ribbon Taki kept wrapped around his wrist. From there, Taki learns about the tragedy of Itomori, how many people died, and just how much destruction the comet left after it struck the town that day. How Taki forgot such a monumental event is kind of astounding. But even so, Taki's journey ends here. The girl he's had in his mind and has been developing a relationship with is dead, and there's nothing else he could do. Or could he? On the last day Taki was in Mitsuha's body, he remembers a shrine he visited that housed something belonging to Mitsuha's family. He didn't know exactly where it was, but he knew it would have a clue as to what he could do. After some searching, he finds the shrine, nestled at the center of a crater left behind from when a comet hit Japan thousands of years ago. But it's a separate comet from the one that made the lake at Itomori and the one that killed Mitsuha. Inside the shrine, Taki finds the kuchikamizake Mitsuha had made, as well as a mural depicting the comet splitting off across the sky. Now at this point in the movie, things get a little trippy. Taki drinks the kuchikamizake, the sake Mitsuha made, and sees her family's history. The animation also takes an artistic twist as we are treated to a procession of Mitsuha's family tree. Taki also witnesses Mitsuha's mother dying and her father leaving. All at once, he manages to see everything that led up to this point. And miraculously, Taki wakes up in Mitsuha's body once again on the day the comet is going to strike the town. All this time when Taki and Mitsuha switch bodies, everyone else thinks the two are having off days. But Grandma finds out what's happened. She tells Taki, in Mitsuha's body, that heightened spiritual abilities have been passed down in the family for generations. While her dad had long abandoned the family traditions, even Mitsuha's dad realizes the person he's speaking to is not his daughter. Taki knows what he has to do. He has to save Itomori from being destroyed by the comet. Well, actually, he just has to save the people in the town, but in any case, Taki gathers up Mitsuha's friends and tries to stage a bomb scare at the town festival so that the citizens will evacuate to the school building, which is outside the comet's danger zone. The plan begins, but while people are confused and scared of the bomb scare Taki had planned, it's not enough to convince people to evacuate. No one is heeding their warnings about the comet. While the plan is underway, there is one thing Taki has to do to make sure it all goes right. He has to get Mitsuha back to her own time to help save her town. Back at the shrine, twilight approaches, the time where it's not quite day or night, and where different worlds blend together. Taki and Mitsuha meet. They're still in each other's bodies, but the two finally meet and recognize one another for the first time. Emotions run high, as this is the emotional climax of the film. Taki returns Mitsuha's red ribbon, the ribbon that she gave him when they first met, before Taki even knew her name. By returning the ribbon, Taki inadvertently severed their connection. They try and write each other's names on the other person's palm, but twilight soon ends and the bond is broken. Taki is back in his own body and time, and Mitsuha is back in hers. Mitsuha is back in her body and time, but the comet is about to hit, and the plan to scare everyone into the school building has failed. People are not aware of the danger. She only has one chance to save her family and her town, and that involves convincing her dad to allow the emergency services to evacuate the town. While she struggles to run down a mountain and back into town, she struggles to remember the person she had bonded with up there. What was his name? For the life of her, she cannot remember anyone. Taki didn't get to write his name, but he did manage to write "I love you" on Mitsuha's palm before their connection was severed. She doesn't remember who wrote this or how it got on her hand, but she can feel something inside her, something that gives her the strength to push on against the impossible odds. She reaches her father in time and manages to evacuate the city in time before the comet strikes. Now that the town is saved, the timelines merge into one, and because Mitsuha never died, she and Taki live in the present, and because Taki returned Mitsuha's ribbon, neither of them remember the other's name. It's like all the events that led up to this point suddenly vanished. However, that's not to say that they have completely forgotten one another. 12 years have passed, and the two live their lives normally, though both of them get the feeling that something or someone is missing from their lives. We see Taki has graduated college and is now looking for work in Tokyo, but he's not having any luck. Then, while he's on the train, another passes by and someone catches his eye. He can't remember where, but he feels like he might have met that person in another life, perhaps. Mitsuha is living in Tokyo now, and on the train sees a man she thought she knew once. At the next stop, the two frantically look for one another, and they finally meet. Taki meets Mitsuha. They ask for one another's name. The camera pans up and the credits roll. The movie's over and our two literal star-crossed lovers are left to remake the relationship they had started 12 years ago when a strange phenomenon allowed them to experience each other's lives in more ways than most people develop a relationship. Your Name is more than just a great film. There's a lot we can take away from this film that American moviegoers would not normally be exposed to, both culturally and socially. Let's look at Mitsuha's life, for example. In her town, she and her family are in charge of the Shinto shrine and regularly perform rituals adhering to the Shinto faith. The ritual we see Mitsuha perform is her and her sister making kuchikamizake. Both are dressed in red and white robes to resemble Miko shrine maidens. After a simple but rhythmic dance, the two chew on some rice and spit it out into a box for it to ferment into sake. This ancient form of making sake that literally translates to mouth-chewed sake. The Shinto faith is practiced to connect present-day Japan to its ancestral roots. This simple yet beautiful ceremony is meant to establish a theme set throughout the movie: connections. Just like Taki and Mitsuha share a connection through time and space, they also connect between the modern culture of urban Tokyo and the rural culture of Itomori. The two could not be more different at the beginning of the movie, but by the end, they're both brought together by their connections of experience and love above all else. This idea of connection is universally applicable. even to our own lives and our different cultures. Socially speaking, this film emphasizes a familiar kind of love and is not shown as sexual like what we're often subjected to when it comes to romance flicks. Going back to the Kuchi Kamizaki, it not only establishes a cultural connection between Mitsuha and Taki, but one could make the argument that when Taki drank Mitsuha's sake, they were sharing an indirect kiss. In Your Name, while the two develop feelings for one another, our main characters never actually meet, at least not until the very end of the film 12 years later. When they do finally meet, it's as if they had found that piece that was missing inside for so long. Your Name touches on an often overlooked point in romance: the yearning for a connection beyond the physical. Your Name takes the often used trope of body switching not as a comedic tool for goofs and gaffes, but as a way for the two characters to develop a relationship and experience each other's lives in a way that only body switching can do. Those are the events of Your Name explained in chronological order. I still can't get over the part where Taki drinks the Kuchi Kamizaki to see Mitsuha's ancestral past and connect with her. What was your favorite part? Let us know in the comments below. And let us know if you'd like to see more of these videos in the future.